What is up, ladies and gents? Noli here. Welcome to another weapon review. This is the Repeater 1874 sniper rifle. I had to talk about this one first because I've raved about it in my first impressions video. Now, a couple of the assumptions I made about this weapon may well have been slightly hasty. What I think I misunderstood is just exactly how similar it was to another weapon that I adored from the past, the Rattlesnake sniper rifle. Now, I look at this and in every way, just taking a look at these base stats, ignore the multipliers and things. This isn't actually the build I've been running in this video. But we take a look at the Rattlesnake. Here we go. This is probably the most comparable. As you can see, the damage and sort of stats fall in between the Rattlesnake and the R93 on the whole. But it's more of a Rattlesnake than anything, simply because on Death Wish difficulty, damage kill chances are incredibly similar. If you follow what I mean by that, the additional damage we get, which is 184 instead of 137 from the Rattlesnake, actually doesn't go to particularly good use over on Death Wish difficulty. However, on Overkill, you can make a great deal of use out of it. So it is the overkill weapon, I would say. It's got Death Wish viability, absolutely, as all the sniper rifles do. In fact, it's always helpful to have someone bringing a sniper rifle along for that bullet penetration and ability to take out numerous enemies when shooting down a single corridor. So do keep that in mind. And it is a sniper rifle, though it functions very much like an assault rifle on the whole, it still gets those boons that sniper rifles do, such as the bullet penetration. Now, as you can see, it seems better than the Rattlesnake in basically every other way as well. The magazine size is much better, the total ammo is weaker, but not a huge difference, and if you run something like fully loaded, it's not going to be a problem for you anyway. Rate of fire is a great increase, and that is honestly one of the things that I notice the most, and you're going to see boosts to stability. And while accuracy may be slightly lower, depending on how you build the Rattlesnake, it's not really going to be a problem to you. So I've found, especially not with my sniper rifles, I really don't focus on stability or accuracy on the whole. Stability, of course, is not something that tends to affect sniper rifles all that much, bearing in mind the gap in between your two shots. But because of the much faster rate of fire on the Repeater, it is a required skill, and for that reason, when the Rattlesnake is kicking up into the air after each shot, the Repeater's staying steady, which means if you're running a scope on it, as I really enjoy doing, you can actually stay zoomed in without too many issues at all and just take shot after shot without having to pull your weapon back. You know, it depends on playstyle, but if you're comfortable staying aimed down sight, there are a lot of skills that can help you out if you choose that sort of style of play. This really is an excellent choice with that increased stability. Sadly, there's no option for a concealment build really. The lowest you can get your overall detection rate to is around about 27 or 29, I believe. I think it's 29, so you can't get full use out of the critical build. And then threat is always a whatever skill if you ask me. So while it does seem a lot better than the Rattlesnake in many different fields, when it comes to Death Wish, you're not going to notice this, but on Overkill, as I've already mentioned, it's a huge improvement. Now, one of the main weaknesses, really, of the Repeater, let's take a look at this weapon, is the sort of bare bones feel of it. There aren't many attachments. It's an old weapon, of course, so you're going to have to choose between these two barrels. The silenced barrel really is a waste of time, if you ask me. Just a couple of pretty throwaway points in stability there. You're just dropping damage even if you have Silent Killer. The increase in damage, I believe, is something to the tune of 7, which isn't enough to hit any particularly big numbers that you're going to need even for Death Wish difficulty. So I would not recommend that. It's a bit of a waste of points. So the silenced barrel is kind of useless. You're going to want to pick up the long range barrel unless you have some sort of janky concealment builders. As I said, it's not going to be able to get to that important 25 detection risk mark. And then the sight. Now, the A5 scope is your only option, and some people think this is one of the massive downsides of this weapon. If you want to run your sniper with a scope on it, and you're not comfortable with the A5, the Repeater just isn't for you, and I'd agree with that. Of course, the A5 is going to take more stability off. Give you more stability, but take more concealment off. But if anything, that's just helpful. You're not going to need those concealment points, as I've said. And I love this scope. It's got really great magnification on it, and if you're running the right skills with it, you're going to be aiming in very quickly, you're going to be able to move around while aimed in. As I already mentioned, that booster stability is huge for when staying zoomed in with your scope, and I adore it. I've already talked about the nostalgic feeling I get when I'm using this weapon. I feel like that sniper out of Saving Private Ryan.
Blessed be the Lord, my strength, which teaches my hands to war and my fingers to fight. My goodness, my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer. My shield and he in whom I trust.
And for whatever reason, it really amps up my play. I adore it. I recently watched General McBadass's video covering the repeater, and he said he wasn't such a fan. Now, I understand the idea that it's a much better close-range weapon with the iron sight in many ways, but I don't feel like going with the A5 particularly reduces your close-range viability. Of course, the hip fire feels great on this gun. I'm going to talk a lot about the animations when we're looking at some gameplay, but I feel like an important point that he didn't fully cover, he did mention it though, of course, was that stability factor, that when you're aimed in, you're not going to receive the same kick you're going to get with the repeater, and so, with the rattlesnake, so running the A5 scope is that much more rewarded. And that's why I am such a fan of it, and it's honestly, I've talked about this, it's my favourite weapon in the game right now. I adore using it. I just get a huge kick at shooting this weapon. It's very unusual. There are also some great mods already coming out for that. A friend of mine on Steam, Calsesh, showing me what he's done. Brilliant sound mod for the repeater. Link in the description below if you want to check that one out yourselves. Will recommend it, and of course mod videos will be coming back in the future. Just kind of getting on top of things with exams coming up. So, as we've already mentioned, the stats on the repeater are seemingly an improvement on the rattlesnake. In some ways, it is a bit of a con. That damage is not worth an awful lot on the highest difficulty in the game. The real mark of a good weapon, Death Wish. But as I've already said, the repeater is still viable for Death Wish. It does just sort of lose out in a couple of different fields to other weapons. It's not got that same sort of specialist quality that the crossbow has. And you're going to have a hard time if you can't pick up the headshots. You're looking at 5 and 6 body shot kills on things like Cloaker, so it's very important you're hitting for the multipliers. But overall, it's got a good set of stats. Certainly nothing mind-blowing, but this weapon is all about handling, feel, and aesthetics, if you ask me. And it's that if you've got good weapon synergy, you're going to still do very well with this weapon. As I've already said, it's probably the best weapon for overkill. It really, really does tear up on that difficulty. So now you guys are taking a good long look at the weapon. Tell me it isn't beautiful. It feels so good to handle, which is, as I've really emphasized in the past, so important when it comes to picking up a weapon, because often weapons are going to act very similarly statistically, simply because there's not that much room for variation with the current stat setup. So the only real difference is how it looks, how it handles. Do you like the iron sight? Do you like the scope? It's all about making that weapon work to your playstyle. And what I really like about the repeater as a sniper rifle is the fact that it is a bit different. It does have a much bigger magazine. Its reload speed isn't too bad as well. Admittedly, you're going to have to reload one round at a time, but offsetting that, you can pick up the Kilmer skill, which really helps out with that 25% faster reload speed. I'm going to recommend that as one of the top skills when using this weapon. So it really does feel different. You're not punished as much for staying aimed in down sight. You can get really long range kills with this weapon. Pick up the headshots simply because that scope has such great magnification. It's very similar to the Thea in that sense. But I think it's much cleaner, feels much nicer to use than the Thea, so it even has an advantage there. Now, I'm by no means saying this weapon is perfect. As I've already mentioned, it misses a couple of multipliers very very marginally. Occasionally, for example, you're going to be leaving shields on 99 health through a headshot through its shield, depending on whether you have the full perk deck maxed out. And that can be a huge problem. That's very, very weak for it. And that's on overkill difficulty. As it is on Deathwish, it's going to take 2 headshots, up to 3 headshots, in fact, through the shield to actually take them out. So its main issue is its inability to take out a particular set of specials. It is still strong against standard tans, greys. You're going to get 1-shot headshots on greys, 2-shot headshots on tans, but not too difficult because you can get headshot, body shot. And because its fire rate is that much better, you can fire that much more lead out there at a considerably faster rate, and the kills will come out quickly, even on Deathwish difficulty. So that's not too much to worry about. The important thing is, though, it's not a solo Deathwish weapon. You're not going to be able to do Deathwish on your own with this very easily at all, whereas you can easily romp through overkill. You need support teammates, people to take out bulldozers. If you're choosing to work into different skills like Kilmer, fully loaded, both very high up on separate trees, you're going to have to run a secondary that doesn't need many skills or perks. I think the best option really is probably the RPG, with its fantastic ability to take out specials, but even then you're putting yourself at a slight disadvantage when the crossbow is now so strong with its explosive rounds. So do keep that in mind when running the repeater. There are a lot of great primary options out there right now, so do be slightly cautious if you're thinking about taking this on all your Deathwish missions. You do need utility in there in your secondary slot, because this really is a pure Slayer weapon. One big disappointment, though, with this weapon, I would say, is its inability to fit in the niche concealment builds or silent builds. I'm disappointed with that. Overkill probably should have allowed a greater set of playstyles to function around this weapon, despite it being a very playstyle orientated weapon in and of itself. Instead, you're going to have to build in a very specific way, or just not focus on the sniper. Take a look at your secondary weapon, emphasize shotguns maybe, and just use this for those long-range kills. That is certainly an option. I've already emphasized how good it is at just killing standard enemies. Make sure, though, you do have some form of specialist killing weapon in your secondary slot. This really only excels against shields, and that's purely because it's a sniper rifle. The R93 is going to do a better job in almost every single way. So how does it stack up to the other weapons in category? I would say it's marginally better than the Rattlesnake, already one of my top 5 favourite weapons in the game. So that's a great start. It's also marginally better than the R93 in my opinion, again, simply because it just seems to work that much better around ammo. It's just a better close range option, especially if you're one who chooses to run it with the iron sight, which, as I've already said, it feels great. It's not very good in dark maps. There's something to emphasize, actually. You might be watching a bit of cook-off gameplay. Now, with the iron sight being so dark, it can be quite hard to pick your shots with that. And because of the lack of modifications, there's no option to bring a flashlight, which is going to cause problems again on the darker missions. So keep that in mind. It's only a small thing worth mentioning it, but I think if you're on a darker heist, you're going to want to run the scope. It just feels like an overall better option. But I've already emphasized this a lot in my first impressions video. I love this weapon like nothing else. It handles wonderfully. It looks so good. It's really benefit from Overkill's new animations. It looks so nice. I can't wait to see more modifications. It sounds great vanilla. Already, as I mentioned, there's been a great sound mod with it. So the overall feel of it, I saw lots of people attacking my statement. Oh wow, this is my favorite weapon in the game. Well, why would it be? It's so similar to other things. Well, the Western feel has been so well brought out by Overkill that it's stylistically awesome. That's what I'd say. So while it might not have the world's best stats, it has one of the best feels of any weapon in the game, and I really can't emphasize enough how that's very important. It hits a lot of the important damage marks, and Overkill is just destruction. I'm really wrecking my brain to think of any weapon that outperforms it on Deathwish, and on Overkill, and I really can't think of it. Just for potential kills in the shortest amount of time, you could stand. I mean, this was probably a bit of a janky example. You can stand in Watch Dogs. The enemy spawns are very obvious. It's a bit unfortunate. It's a huge sign of that heist age, if you ask me. It's the least professional feeling heist when you're watching enemies spawn by containers. But I was literally spawn killing them for about 5 minutes. This was like Nuketown on Call of Duty. This was absolutely disgusting, and it's just DPS potential with that higher rate of fire than most snipers makes it such a force to be reckoned with. As I've said, unfortunately doesn't hit those Death Wish markers. It's not a bad Death Wish weapon, but there are a lot better out there. Amazing for overkill. I'm going to have to give this weapon an 8.5 out of 10. I couldn't quite give it a 9. It just doesn't have that Death Wish potential. It needs to be 9 or 10. But it works so well on every other difficulty. It's better than the Rattlesnake, which I put at an 8 right now, thanks to other replacement options. So it needs that 0.5 on the end, just to sort of delineate where it stands amongst other weapons. For myself, it's a 10 out of 10. I love using it more than anything else in the game. But for a more practical sense, 8.5 seems like a fair score for this. That's a lot for watching this video, guys. I hope, first of all, you all enter my competition to win the Western Pack. The announcement for that will be done on Wednesday. The winners, there are some crazy high scores. First one in was at 29,000. Put it that way. That is a pretty big milestone for you guys to reach. It's not the world's easiest minigame. Keep at it. And as I said, draw will be done on Wednesday, and you can potentially win this repeater if you think it's worth it. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you don't agree, I'm happy for discussion down in the comments section below. And by no means saying this is the best weapon in the game, otherwise it would have a 10. But for myself, it's my favourite weapon to use, and that makes a huge difference as to how well I'm going to play with it. How well, when you're enjoying something, you know, I think an argument stands that if you're having fun, you're always going to do better, and that's what this weapon is for me. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.